Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss UGC NET Electronic Science previous year questions. So before that, a positive note, that is a little progress each day adds up to big results. So with this positive note we will start our discussion. So UGC NET paper 2 2013 question number 1 to 15. So here comes the first question. The PN junction diode is a. First question is the PN junction diode is a. The options are passive device, vacuum device, unilateral device and bilateral device. So what is the PN junction diode? So the passive devices are the devices which are capable of absorbing energy, and the unilateral devices are the devices which allows the current flow in only one direction, and the bilateral devices are the devices the current flow in both the directions. So here the PN junction diode is what? The vacuum tubes are the devices which are used to manufacture the transistors. So which is the correct option? The PN junction diode is the passive device, or vacuum device, or unilateral device, or bilateral device. The passive devices are the devices which are capable of absorbing energy. The active devices are the devices which are capable of delivering energy, and the vacuum devices are used for constructing the transistor. Unilateral devices are the devices which allows current flow in only one direction. The bilateral devices are the devices which allows current flow in both the directions. So which is the correct option? So here comes the answer. The answer for this is unilateral device, because the PN junction diode allows the current only in one direction. So some notes related to the PN junction diode. A PN junction diode is formed when a p-type semiconductor is fused into an n-type semiconductor, creating a potential barrier voltage across the diode junction. So if you take p-type device on one side, p-type semiconductor on one side, and n-type semiconductor on another side, so if these two are combined, then it will forms the PN junction diode. So in PN junction diode the current flows only in one direction. So the PN junction diode is one of the simplest semiconductor devices around, and which has the characteristics of passing current in only one direction. However, unlike a resistor, a diode doesn't behave linearly with respect to the applied voltage, as the diode has an exponential current voltage relationship, and therefore we cannot describe its operation by simply using the equation such as Ohm's law. So here the explanation is nothing but the PN junction is formed by using P and N type semiconductors, and in diode the current flows in only one direction, and the current and voltage relationship in the PN junction diode is exponential relationship, unlike the resistor is having the linear relationship in between the current and voltage. For example, if you draw the VI characteristics of the resistor, it will be linear. If you draw the VI characteristics of the diode, it will be in exponential form. Because the current equation I equal to I naught into e power b by eta Vt minus 1. So already you know that the current equation for the diode I equal to I naught, where I naught is the reverse saturation current, e power v by eta Vt minus 1. So the VI relation, the voltage and current relationship of the PN diode is exponential in nature, unlike the resistor is having the VI relation is, that is voltage current relation, is linear nature. So the next question, the first question is related to the diode, second question is related to the semiconductors. A semiconductor has dash temperature coefficient of resistance. So first one is 0, second one is positive, second option is positive, third option is negative, and the D is 1. So the semiconductor is having dash temperature coefficient of resistance. So the answer is negative temperature coefficient of resistance. That means a negative coefficient of a material means the resistance decreases with an increase in temperature. So in semiconductor material, the resistance decreases. If I am saying the resistance decreases with increase in temperature. So whenever the resistance decreases means the conductivity of the material increases. So that's why the semiconductors are negative temperature quotient. Negative temperature quotient in the sense the resistance decreases with increase in temperature. So the semiconductor materials like carbon, silicon, germanium typically have negative temperature quotient of the resistance, whereas the semiconductors are having the negative temperature quotient, whereas the metals are having the positive temperature quotient. The positive temperature quotient is nothing but the resistance increases with increase in temperature. So the next question is a JFET has. The JFET is nothing but the junction field effect transistor. So we are having bipolar junction transistor. We are having BJT, that is bipolar junction transistor, and FET, that is unipolar junction transistor. Sorry, field effect transistor. Field effect transistor, it is also called as the unipolar junction transistor. In FET we are having the JFET as well as MOSFET. In FET we are having the classification of JFET as well as MOSFET. So the JFET is junction field effect transistor. Again in JFET, so this is JFET, let us say this is JFET. In FET we are having the classification of JFET and MOSFET. In JFET we are again having the classification, that is P channel JFET and N channel JFET. So in MOSFET also, MOSFET is metal oxide semiconductor field effect transistor. We are having the P type and enhancement and depletion MOSFET, and in enhancement again we are having P type and N type. In depletion again we are having the P type and N type. So first is FET. FET is classified into JFET and MOSFET. In JFET we are having P and N. In MOSFET we are having the enhancement and depletion. So here they are asking the question, that is a JFET has one built-in diode, or two built-in diode, or three built-in diode, or four built-in diode. That means the JFET is formed by using the two diodes, or three diodes, or four diodes, or only one diode. So here comes the answer is two diodes. So the junction field effect transistor is the simplest type of field effect transistor. So if you observe the symbol, the terminals are drain, gate and source. So here for example the gate is N type, and here this is P type. So here we are using the two built-in diodes in order to construct the junction field effect transistor. So this is the P type MOSFET, this is the N type JFET, and this is the P type JFET. Here the arrow marks is inside the gate, drain, source. Here the arrow mark is inwards, and the here arrow mark is outwards. This is the N type. So the next question is, the superposition theorem is essentially based on the concept of. The options are quality, linearity, reciprocity and non-linearity. So the superposition theorem is essentially based on the concept of. Whether the superposition theorem is based on quality or linearity or reciprocity or non-linearity? So the answer is linearity. So what is superposition theorem? The superposition theorem states that in a linear circuit with several sources, the current and voltage for any element in the circuit is the sum of currents and voltages produced by each source acting independently. For example, in superposition theorem, if you take a network, in network we are having many current and voltage sources, or many resistors and many passive elements. So if you calculate the current and voltages for any element in the circuit, any resistor or capacitor or inductor in the element, sorry, inductor is not there, so any resistor in the element, for example, if you take the complex network and you are trying to calculate the current or voltage for any element in that complex network, so that current or voltage in the circuit is the sum of currents or voltage produced by each source acting independently. The superposition theorem is mainly applicable to the linear quantities only. For example, if you take the power formula is P equal to I square R. So this is the non-linear quantity. So in order to find out the power of any circuit, you are not going to use the superposition theorem. So this is I square into R. I square R. So the superposition theorem is applicable to the linear elements only. So the next question, a counter that counts binary from 000 to 1010 is known as. So here 1010 is nothing but the 10. The decimal value of 1010 is 10. That means, so if you this is the binary number. So if you want to convert the binary number into decimal number, you have to multiply each and every digit with its positional weightage. So here I am having 1010. That means 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 digits. So 0 into 1 into first from here 1 into 2 power 3, 0 into 2 power 2, 1 into 2 power 1, 0 into 2 power 0. So here 1 into 2 power 3 is 8. 1 into 2 power 3 is 8. 1 into 2 power 3 is 8 plus 0 into 2 power 2 is 4. That means 0 plus 0. And here 1 into 2 power 1 is 2. And 0 into 2 power 0 is 0 into 2 power 0 is 0. So 8 plus 2 is 10. So the counter here they are asking about 000 decimal value is 0 and 100 decimal value is 10. That is 8 plus 2 10, multiplying each bit with its positional weightage. So a counter that counts the binary from 0 to 10 is known as, the options are binary counter, decade counter, BCD counter and mod 10 counter. So the answer for this question is binary counter. Next question, a digital multiplexer is an. So the digital multiplexer is also called as the universal logic circuit. So the digital multiplexer is an. The options are combinational circuit, sequential circuit, amplifier or memory device. So what is meant by combinational circuit? The combinational circuit is the circuit in which the output is not fed back to the input. In sequential circuit, the output is fed back to the input. In amplifier is used to strengthen the weak signal. And the memory device is used to store some information. So digital multiplexer is which type of device? Is it the combinational or is it sequential or Is it amplifier or memory device? So in combinational circuit we are not having any memory, we are not having any feedback. In sequential circuit we are having feedback and we are having some memory elements. In amplifier is just used to strengthen the weak signal, and the option D is memory device, that is used to store the information. So the digital multiplexer is a device that is the combinational circuit. So answer is combinational circuit. Next question is, an 8086 has how many number of flags? 5. Option A is 5, B is 7, C is 9 and D is 11. So 8086 microprocessor has how many number of flags? The option is C. So here the flag register of 8086, so the image is not correctly visible. So here we are having the 9 flags. So from 0 to 7 status flags, and here they are indicating 8 to 15, these are the control flags. So here we are having the carry flag, parity flag, auxiliary carry flag, zero flag, sign flag and so on. So the 8086 has 9 flags. Here comes the next question. In 8085 microprocessor, the register which holds the address of the next instruction to be executed. So in 8085 microprocessor, the register which holds the address of the next instruction to be executed. The address of the next instruction to be executed. So the options are instruction register, stack pointer, temporary register, program counter. So the option is program counter. The program counter is the register which holds the address of the next instruction to be executed. The program counter is the register which holds the address of the next instruction to be executed. So here are some features of 8085 microprocessor. The 8085 microprocessor is the 8-bit processor. It is a single chip device with 40 pins. It has multiplexed address and data bus from AD0 to AD7. It works on the 5 volt DC power supply. The maximum clock frequency is 3 MHz while the minimum frequency is the 500 kHz. So the 8085 is the 40 pin processor. It works on 5 volt DC power supply. The maximum clock frequency is 3 MHz and it has multiplexed address and data bus from AD0 to AD7. So the next question is regarded to Pentium 3 processor. So they are asking about whether the Pentium 3 processor is the 32-bit microprocessor or 16-bit or 64-bit or 128-bit. So it is the 32-bit microprocessor. The Intel Pentium is introduced in 1999. Its clock speed varied from 500 MHz to 1.4 GHz. So it has 9.5 million transistors. But in the options of the net, they are given that the Pentium 3 processor is the 64-bit processor. So here comes the 10th question. Demodulation is a process. The options are done at the transmitter. B option is filtering the carrier. C is removing of the sidebands. D is similar to the modulation. So this question is from the communication, that is analog communication. So the answer is of filtering the carrier. Actually what is mean by modulation? So the modulation is nothing but it is the process of combining the low frequency signal with the very high frequency radio wave, that is called as the carrier wave. So if you combine the low frequency signal with the very high frequency radio wave, then it is said to be the modulation process. So the resultant wave is called the modulated carrier wave. Low frequency signal is called as the modulating wave. So whenever we are combining the low frequency signal with the high frequency signal, that is said to be the modulation. So whenever we are combining the low frequency signal with the high frequency signal, that resultant signal is called as the modulated carrier wave, and the low frequency signal is called as the modulating wave. So modulating signal is nothing but some characteristics of a carrier signal varied in accordance with the instantaneous amplitude of the signal is called modulating signal, which has low frequency and carry information. For example, we are combining the information that is low frequency. Our message is the low frequency signal. That low frequency signal is combined with the carrier signal. So if you are changing the any characteristic, for example, if you are changing the some characteristics of a carrier signal varied in accordance with the instantaneous amplitude of the signal, that is called as the modulating. So here the carrier signal is the high frequency signal. So modulation, mainly the modulation is done at the transmitter side, and the demodulation is a process, it is done at the receiver side. So at the transmitter side we are combining the message signal with the high frequency signal, and we are transmitting the signal. At the receiver side we are filtering out the carrier signal, and we need only the message signal. That's why demodulation process is of filtering the carrier. So hope you understood. The next question comes here. The terms frequency pushing and pulling are related to. The terms frequency pushing and pulling are related to. Here the options are reflex klystron, two cavity klystron, pulsar radiator system, pulsar radar system, and magnetron. So the terms frequency pushing and pulling are related to which of the following? The option A is reflex klystron, two cavity klystron, pulsar radar system, magnetron. So the answer is magnetron. So what is magnetron? The magnetron is a high powered vacuum tube that works as a self-excited microwave oscillator. Crossed electron and magnetic fields are used in the magnetron to produce the high power output required in radar equipment. So the magnetron is the high powered vacuum tube. It will be worked as the self-excited microwave oscillator. It is used as the microwave oscillator. The magnetron is nothing but microwave oscillator, and it has the crossed electron and magnetic fields. It produces the high power output. So what is pulsar Doppler radar? The pulsar Doppler radar is the radar system that determines the range of the target. The pulsar Doppler radar is used to determine the range of the target. So it uses the pulsing time techniques, and it uses the Doppler effect. So by using that, it will detect the range of the target. And the pulsar Doppler systems were first widely used in fighter aircraft starting in the 1960s. So the magnetron is the high power vacuum tube microwave oscillator. The pulsar Doppler radar is used to find the range of a target. And what is klystron amplifier? A klystron amplifier is the specific linear beam vacuum tube which is used as amplifier for high resonant frequencies. And what is reflex klystron? The reflex klystron is an amplifier that is used as an oscillator in a modulator, microwave transmitters, and radar receivers. So these all magnetron, pulse Doppler radar, klystron amplifier, and reflex klystron all are the microwave operating devices, but out of all the magnetron is the microwave oscillator, high powered vacuum tube microwave oscillator. Pulsar Doppler radar is used to find out the range of a target. Klystron amplifier is the used as amplifier for high resonant frequencies. The reflex klystron amplifier is used as an oscillator. So the answer for this question is the terms frequency pushing and pulling are related to the magnetron. That is microwave oscillator. So the next question, out of the following memory types, one that is volatile is. Out of the following memory types, one that is volatile is. So the first one is magnetic disk, second one is ferrite core, third one is, that is C, option C is semiconductor ROM, that is read only memory, and the fourth one is semiconductor RAM, that is random access memory. So magnetic disk is used to store the memory, so these are, and the second one is ferrite core, semiconductor ROM, read only memory, semiconductor RAM, random access memory. So the answer for this question is the RAM, that is semiconductor RAM, that is random access memory. So magnetic disk, ferrite core and semiconductor ROM, these three are the permanent memories, these are non-volatile memories. And the semiconductor RAM is the volatile memory, so whenever the data is, so whenever the power is gone, so the data which will be stored in the RAM will be volatile in nature. So the next question is, when Q of an antenna, that is when quality factor of an antenna increase, the bandwidth increases, decreases, stays constant, equal to 0, stays constant, equal to unity. So here the answer is stays constant. So whenever the quality factor of an antenna increases, the bandwidth will be stayed constant, equal to unity. Next, the value of intrinsic standoff ratio of UJT should be. So the UJT is the unijunction transistor. It has one base. It has base 1, base 2 and emitter. The three terminals of the UJT are base 1, base 2 and emitter. The UJT is the three terminal device. So they are asking about intrinsic standoff ratio of UJT. So the options are greater than 1, less than 1, equal to 0 and equal to 10. So here the answer is less than 1. The intrinsic standoff ratio of UJT should be less than 1. So here the explanation for this is, the intrinsic standoff ratio is the ratio of the base 1 resistor. So I am saying that the UJT is having three terminals, base 1, base 2 and the emitter. So the intrinsic standoff ratio is the resistance of base 1 to the sum of resistance of base 1 plus resistance of base 2. So RB1 by RB1 plus RB2. So it can be expressed as RB1 by RB1 plus RB2, or RB1 plus RB2 is written as RBB0. So the typical range of intrinsic standoff ratio is from 0.4 to 0.8, 0.4 to 0.5, 0.8. So the value of intrinsic standoff ratio of UJT should be less than 1. So the next question, in a normal ECG waveform, which wave has, so here the question is, in a normal ECG waveform, which wave has the maximum amplitude? Which wave has the maximum amplitude? P wave, R wave, Q wave and T wave. So which wave has the maximum amplitude? So here the question is, in a normal ECG waveform, which wave form has the maximum amplitude? So the answer is R wave. The R wave is having the maximum amplitude. So thank you all. Today we are discussing the 15 questions of the UGC NET Electronic Science. So hope you understood something. So thank you.